The uncomfortable emotions can almost feel like a tidal wave moving through your body. And it's like, you can feel these emotions come up. When we sit in meditation, we're kind of taught, meditate and practice mindfulness and do all these things. They're going to make you happier. Like, we forget to give people the real information, which is, actually, when you sit in silence for the first time, everything that you have been ignoring, everything you've been ignoring is going to suddenly want to come up and be seen in that moment. And I always say, remember, emotions are just energy. They're energy in motion. And they just want to keep going. They want to keep moving on their journey. And when they get stuck in your body, they cause pain and dis-ease. That's what the word disease is. I'm not at ease.
Yeah.
And actually, the foundation of doing this work is relaxation.
There's a lot of mystics on the internet. Shout out and much love, you crazy fools, that could use dusting off a textbook or two warmly, without judgment. And secondarily, there are certainly a lot of scholars in academia who would be well served by eating a mushroom. So I'm trying to bridge those two worlds. I'm Bob Peck, and this is Karmic Relief.
My background is in documentary film and comparative religion. I wrote a book called Original Sin is a Lie: How Spirituality Defies Dogma and Reveals Our True Self.
It's an interview show where I talk to spiritual teachers, activists, scholars, people that live within these traditions and also appreciate the overlap. What happens when you start to get activated internally, that makes you activated in a compassionate way in the world. I'm thrilled to be talking to fantastic, inspiring human beings. I have to do much less work, which is nice, because I'm just asking them questions about their story. It's a life hack.
Hi.
I hope you'll enjoy these explorations, these really excavations. In the ones I've filmed so far, they've all been really beautiful and deep and lighthearted. So please enjoy Karmic Relief. I'm Bob Peck. I wrote Original Sin is a Lie, and now I'm asking a bunch of questions to intelligent, compassionate humans.
This episode is with my friend Alison Canavan and her incredible story. Alison is a UCLA-trained Mindfulness Facilitator from the Semel Institute of Neuroscience and Human Behaviour and a Master NLP Practitioner. She's my friend from Dublin, Ireland, who made her way all the way down to Central Texas. She runs a successful private practice as a health and wellness coach. She delivers motivational talks on health and well-being all over the world, specializing in mental health and addiction. Alison began her career as an international model for nearly 2 decades, but in recent years, all of her focus is on mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being for herself and others. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Bob Peck. Welcome back to Karmic Relief. I'm here today with Alison Canavan. She is a mindfulness teacher. She is a former international model. She's been in wellness for a long time, although she does not look like it, but she has. And we're friends. She read my book a couple of years ago, and we've been meaning to do some kind of partnership collaboration creatively for a while. So thrilled to have you on. Love what you do with your work in terms of mindfulness. You do a lot of work with the HeartMath Institute in terms of the resonance and the connection between heart, mind, body, mind. Alison is a pro. Thrilled to have you on.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. This has been a long time coming.
It really has. I do want to learn about your background, which is fascinating. Particularly because, just to fast forward to where you are now, you're in the hill country of Texas.
Yeah.
Like really hill country. Like Austin's technically the hill country, but you're outside of San Antonio in a beautiful home and a beautiful view, surrounded by Christians.
Yeah.
Which surprised you initially. But you have lived in LA, New York, and you hail, if you can't tell by now, from Ireland.
Yes, indeed. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I'm probably about an hour and a half from here, where we are today.
Yeah.
and probably an hour from San Antonio still. So
Oh yeah,
yeah.
you're out there.
So I'm like 20 minutes from the nearest gas station. That's still a thing, by the way. Every time I think I have that down, and I'm like, I think it was last week, I was driving James to school, the light came on again, and I'm like, how did I do that? Because, I mean...
Because as a homesteader...
Yeah, you cannot run out of gas, like, especially when you live 20 minutes from the nearest gas station. So, yeah. I mean, gosh, my journey to Texas has been...
Well, let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because Ireland, as, like... Americans don't really know country, global, like, we're learning, I think the well-traveled maybe do more, and like the historians of us, but most Americans don't really understand that, like, Ireland has had a antagonizing relationship with England for 1,000 years, and like, they're right there, and they don't like the mother empire that's next door, sharing the island with them. And I love seeing the Irish solidarity with Palestine has been so awesome. Like, several Irish friends are like, because they get it. You guys understand empire.
We carry everything in our DNA, right?
Yes.
So generations and generations of whatever has not been healed before will keep getting passed on until someone finally goes, okay, I'll do the work,
Sure.
And when we heal, we're healing 7 generations behind and 7 generations in front. But what we carry, we either continue or we break the pattern. But, we hold memory. We pass on memory, and especially pain. And like with reference to Palestine, like the Ireland up until the last century have a long history of being oppressed.
Yeah.
Like people, when I talk about Irish, people go, oh, Gaelic. And I'm like, well, actually, when you're in school in Ireland, it's called Irish because it was our language and we're Irish people,
Right.
And there are still people that speak Irish as a first language. And in the west of Ireland and parts of Donegal, we still have Irish TV and Irish radio.
Oh, wow.
But, it was really interesting that you bring this up because I literally was just having a chat with my 13-year-old and the car on the way here. I just dropped him down the road to a friend. And he was asking about what are the main differences between the Protestant and the Catholic religion. And I thought, this is an interesting conversation coming up today.
Right.
So I was just explaining to them that Church of England and Protestants don't believe that Mary was a virgin. This is the number one thing, which is kind of huge when you think about that as a difference. But he said, and that's what they're fighting over. I went, oh no, sweetheart, That's not at all what they were fighting over. I said, I find it very interesting that a lot of hate is indoctrinated. I think growing up, we would have also been indoctrinated with Protestants are bad, Catholics are good, right? I'm Catholic.
Sure.
But a lot of the time, that's
us
not...
and them.
Us and them. It's not explained, Catholics were the people that wanted Ireland to be Ireland, and the Protestants historically were, Church of England, the UK, and wanted to stay as a part of the British Empire. And it's not even that simplistic.
And even Henry just wanted to marry Anne Boleyn. Yeah. That's how human and egoic of a drama it is.
Yeah,
in terms of the politics, right? So, yeah.
So it's
I'm the Pope now.
Yeah. And it is fascinating to grow up in a country like Ireland, where I started traveling really, really young. I started modeling at 15. I represented Ireland at 16 in Las Vegas in the Ford Supermodel at the World competition, which opened my eyes to a very different world very quickly. Yeah. Going to Las Vegas when you're 16 and, seeing, Las Vegas then, I'm 46. So let's put this into context. Like Las Vegas was
younger than me.
That's turning everything around and giving up booze and drugs will definitely reverse your aging.
Which I haven't done yet.
I think I looked older in my 20s. We were, myself and my friend who's a model who just got sober, we were chatting the other day and we were talking about how there's photos of me in my 20s as a model. I look horrific. And I do remember my agent in London saying to me, like,
I'm sure you look lovely.
You need to ease up on the partying. Like I had that kind of bloated for when you party too much and your face is just bloated and it's like, wow. But anyway, So I remember being in Las Vegas, but Vegas, I remember my friend's dad, a man called Mr. Fuller. He's no longer with us. Kate was one of my best friends. I snuck out. So I was representing Ireland. I was sharing a room with the girl from Canada, and he said, come on. He took me out into these VIP rooms, and he was a big businessman. And it was so glamorous. I mean, I cannot even tell you. It was like old Hollywood, like these amazing singers, and it was the time of Dean Martin and everything,
Right.
and Frank Sinatra. And these women were dressed in the most incredible dresses I've ever seen. And I was just like 16 and my jaw was on the ground.
Wow.
But it was
Glitz
interesting.
and glamour.
Glitz and glamour, which was incredible. I just returned from seeing U2 in Vegas recently for my birthday
That's the
in March.
old homies.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get into modeling very young.
Yeah.
Very early. And you start meeting tons of people.
Mm.
Right?
Oh, it's 16.
You do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was the reason I was bringing up that is because when I went back to Las Vegas recently, I was like, oh, this is not the Las Vegas that I remember from when I was 16. This is really not like it's, very.
Not my favorite place.
No, at all. And I think maybe going back this time, not drinking or partying or whatever, was a very, very different energy. Like, so it is a city of like debauchery, it's kind of like, I was like, everything that's wrong with the world in America is like confined in this
Original
small
sin is a
place.
lie except for Las Vegas.
Yes.
It's alive and well.
Yeah, definitely. The energy I found very heavy. I didn't love it. But that was the beginning of my modelling career. And I think I came 9th. And I went straight to Ford in Paris, and I started doing all the shows in Paris, and it was pretty easy because I was going from Ireland to Paris, left school, moved to London full time, and was able to, I spent a
When did
couple
you leave school?
I left school as soon as I did my leaving, so the end of high school. So I didn't go to college.
Got it.
So I was modelling all the way through secondary school. In Ireland, it's called, which would be the equivalent of high school here.
Yeah.
So I continued modelling all the way through, every school holiday. Summer holidays, I would go and spend a couple of months with different agents, and I lived everywhere. It was amazing. I lived in, I went to South Africa for a while, Australia, I worked in Germany and Portugal and Milan and everywhere, and then moved to New York City when I was about 24 full time and spent about 8-9 years in New York. I'm based in New York, but working all over the States and doing everything from Dillard's to JCPenney's to Macy's to every single, God, this country is a dream for models from the perspective of catalogues and commercials and everything. So, and I spent some time in Australia when I was 21, just after my dad died and my mom came over. So that career gave me the ability to travel all over the world, which was an education for life, as my father would say, is better than anything you learn in the classroom. And it is so true.
That's amazing. Yeah, I knew some of that, but that's a lot of countries. That's a lot of places to go at a very young age. And, maybe I'll just tease now that I think this helped inform your later spiritual. It was always there, but it helped to show you the thinness of it all, right? Which, we'll definitely get into more, but, maybe do you have any stories worth sharing from those days? I mean, I know on the negative side, I know that there was
gazillions.
On the negative side, I know that there's like the internet knows now, like America, really everybody, internet culture is aware that like fashion, movies, music is full of people that are taking advantage of young people. Like it's absolutely horrifying. It's like, they're like, hey, I've now made it to this part of my career where I have keys, and therefore they must come through me, these young people that are desirable and so on. And, from what I know about your story, you experienced, friggin' monsters, being around absolute monsters in those environments.
I mean, ego and power as a duo are a very dangerous combination, especially when you have men in positions of power and there's a lot of young girls. And, the taste of fame, not for just the generation I came from, but for the generation today as well. People abandon themselves so quickly for what they think will make them happy, right?
Right.
And we're sold this incredible optics of when you become famous and when you meet all these people.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you have all this money and like, then you'll be happy. And is really where my journey with spirituality came from, because, you know, I went into this world at 15. Nobody cared about who you were or what you had to say. Like,
right.
That was just not important. I mean, I remember going back and doing a commercial in the UK. My son was born, so it's in the last 13 years, but maybe he was about 4 or 5. And it was my first job. I had been studying nutrition for years. I was probably working in clinic with people or whatever. So I was very different. And as talent going in on this set, I remember sitting in the makeup chair and somebody talking about something that they were moving through, and I was offering some perspective. But I remember at lunchtime, you know, looking at the segregation, you know, talent sit here and the rest of the important people sit here. And I thought, oh my God, is this how it always was? But I just didn't notice, right? Like, is this what my life was like for 20 years? And I just did not notice. And every time I went to say something or whatever, I remember even the director was like, shh, shh. I thought, oh my gosh, no wonder I struggled with depression and anxiety and fell heavily into addiction, because your voice was just not wanted, first of all, like really not wanted. You know, it's like, please stop talking. Like, please stop having an opinion on it.
You're not an equal.
And I remember in Paris, as a super duper young girl in a model apartment, and there were supposed to be people living with us all the time, full time. And I was too scared to tell my parents that they weren't. So, because everybody at home was like, oh my God, you're one of the first girls to ever leave Ireland, and Ireland's first supermodel, and this is so amazing, and, you know, it's every girl's dream. And so that was being said to me all the time, and I was in the newspapers all the time. So, because
there's like 1,000 articles of you on newspapers and magazines.
And because of that, I didn't feel like I could actually tell anybody what was really happening. And what was really happening was quite ugly, that, you know, someone from the agency was coming and checking our fridge to see what kind of food we were eating. Like, you know, the girls in my apartment at the time, and this is before I tried drugs and before I was partying and doing all of that, were on drugs, and guys were coming over and giving them what they needed. Some of them were like taking, you know, a lot of pills to keep them thin. There was girls throwing up. I mean, there was everything. And I remember being in bed at night, going to sleep, crying and terrified, like actually terrified, going, oh my God, what is this? And then you have PRs, which is you have in every city in the world where there's models. And the PR's job is to take all the girls to nightclubs and ply them with alcohol or drugs or whatever the hell they want to make the club look good. So, you know, as a young girl, you're 15.
It's like another source of income for the modeling agency or something.
Yeah, and these guys get paid a lot of money as PRs. They get paid a lot of money to, you know, they still do this all over the world, like clubs in Vegas and New York or whatever, you know. They have certain sections where they bring girls in, and you get like, you don't pay for anything, and you get all your alcohol free or whatever. And, you know, very wealthy guys come in and they get the opportunity to hang out and chat. I mean, I look back on it now and I'm kind of like, the word hooker comes to mind. Like, it's really interesting.
It's prostitute-y.
Yes.
Prostitute-esque.
Yeah.
You know.
Now.
A free drink for a convo, you know, whatever. But.
And I remember like being really young in Paris and going to some of these clubs, and the depth of just
really good guys in there.
Oh,
gosh,
yeah, really good guys.
Quality humans.
I just remember nothing about it ever made me comfortable, you know, and this is where I work with a lot of young girls and girls going into modeling and coach them, and I'm always like, trust your feelings.
Yeah.
We are taught to self-abandon at such a young age. Like, in this world, we're taught to be good girls and good boys, and I'm always like, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a good girl when your parent tells you to go into a room and behave, and, you know, you have to be a good girl now when you go in here and sit down and do this or whatever. And it's the difference between respect right? And
right. There's nuance to
manners
that.
and difference, yes.
You don't
but
want to be a piece of shit kid either, but
no,
at the
but
same time, that's what we're
teaching
saying.
your child to be a good girl or
Yeah.
a good boy
Right.
usually means that they learn to self-abandon at a super young age.
Right.
And what happens when we do that is that we are not connected to our intuition. We are not connected to the truth of who we are. And so speaking up for yourself as you get older when you don't feel safe usually does not happen. And this is a conversation that's super important to have. And I lost my voice really young. I remember...
But you found it now, sis.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
I remember leaving a party that the agency told me to go home with a certain photographer. And I went home by myself and, walked into the agency the next day, and they were like, "Where did you go?" And I was like, "I went home." And one of the bookers said to me, "You could be on the cover of Vogue." And I was like, okay. So in 20 or 30 years' time, I know I won't know any of you people. I know that none of you will be in my life. And I will the one who will have to wake up and go, well, did I get that cover because I slept with someone, or did I get it because I'm good at my job? Right? Like, there's a big difference. And now at 46, I think, I'm so grateful I didn't do that because I have to live with me, and it doesn't mean that all my decisions were good. I made a lot of shitty decisions in my life, a lot of shitty decisions in my career. But I always remember then I went in and a couple of my bookings had disappeared for like big fashion shows like Hervé Leger and different things. And I remember subtly being told that people that don't do as they're told, these are the kind of things that happen. And so
people that have integrity look out.
Yeah.
Basically.
So it's like play the game.
Yeah.
Like play the game or else. And these are kind of the unwritten, unspoken rules that those industries operate on.
And this is the 90s.
Yes.
And 2000s.
Yes. 90s,
and so this is pre-Harvey Weinstein era.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, when you talk about Harvey Weinstein era, I mean, like he is the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
Like, I mean.
Well, and the Diddy, that's this year. So it's going to all keep coming, right?
Yes.
So, but yeah, I think to your point, like Hugh Hefner era. Like, remember him? He died. Funny fact about Hugh Hefner. He died finally. Like, he was super old, remember? And he was 90s.
Yeah.
And then like a month later, Harvey Weinstein got busted. And some of the jokes were like, we needed Hefner to die to like hold creepy men accountable. Like he was the gatekeeper.
I remember reading something recently about one of Hugh Hefner's ex-wives, and it was pretty horrifying story.
He was not a good person, and kind of what you're sharing about that industry. I mean, industries.
The casting couch still exists today.
Right. I'm not saying that we're in this perfect harmony.
I mean, like it's you have to understand that. I always say to people, like, there's always a price to pay for every choice and every decision that you make, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing that goes unseen. And I do fully believe that we pay for everything. And that's part of my deeper spiritual work, is that we get away with nothing. So just because you think somebody doesn't know or somebody doesn't see or somebody's not going to find out, it's like it's between you and the creator. And the
show's called Karmic Relief.
Yeah.
So action, reaction.
Literally between you and the creator. And I'm always like, it's what you do when people are not looking that's actually more important. Yeah. Right?
And I thank you for clarifying. I definitely wasn't trying to say like that was then, this is now, because that's not true. You're absolutely right. I think it was just like particularly like there was like zero accountability on the internet. No. It was a little different in that regard. Yeah. But at the same time, like, what I want to ask you is, you start to listen to your intuitive voice in that period, in your 20s, and as you also write a book, which we'll get to, but kind of in that period where you were on top of the game, what you start noticing these things. I mean, is that kind of because you eventually leave? I mean, you were there for a decade or two, but the relationship with that industry changed over time, and so
I was there for. I mean, I modeled all the way up into my mid-30s.
Yeah,
and, did a couple of jobs after that. So I still kind of stayed in the industry as far as kind of media and writing and a little bit of TV and radio and different things for a very long time. And it was a very interesting journey for me because I started partying really young. Alcohol was a massive crutch for me, and drugs came right hand in hand with that.
Right.
And at the height of my success was the height of my addiction. So it's like something in me felt so freaking empty, and the void kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I teach about energy now. And I teach in corporates and individuals that everything is energy. And I was surrounded by energetic vampires in a business that was seeking your soul, surrounded by people who did not have my back. I mean, it shows that when you get sober and everybody disappears, probably weren't surrounded by very genuine, authentic people who
didn't actually care at all.
No, at all.
Yeah.
And even I remember a few years after I went back to New York, my friend was getting married, and I have some amazing friends. I have to say that, because if some of my friends are listening to this, I still have some awesome friends that I've had for 20 odd years that I'm still super close with. And I remember Terry flew up to say hi, and Chris Graham, a DJ, and a few people. But we went out down to a nightclub, and I went over to a few people that I had known, for years and years and years. And some of them were PRs, and they were still working in the club industry. And I went over to say hi, and they were like, hi, and just turned around and walked off. And I was like, oh my gosh, like a decade of partying with you and thinking that like you guys were my friends. And wow. It just showed me that there are different worlds in this world we live in. I'm always trying to explain that, like we don't all live in the same world. And when you decide to change your life, the word decide is very interesting because it actually comes from the Latin root decidere, which means to cut away from. And so when you decide for a better life, a different life, it will mean you've got to cut away from things that no longer serve you. And that's going to be people, places, things, environments, countries, if needs be, right?
Right.
But it is one of the things...
Civilization.
It's one of the things that prevents people from really making the changes that they seek. And the changes that they would love is you can't stay in the same shit environment and expect to grow. If you put a plant into toxic soil, it's going to die. Right. So if you're in an environment where you just can't seem to get on top of your life or get ahead of yourself, you've just got to look around, and we've got to be willing to let a lot go that doesn't serve us.
So well put. And kind of what's funny about that word, decide, coming from the root word of cutting, makes me think of Yogananda's interpretation of the Jesus line, I've come not to bring peace, but a sword. The spiritual tool of discernment, basically, is how Yogananda reads that, to say, I'm cutting away through the illusion and my attachment to the illusion, the clinging to the illusion, etc. That's the mystic read. The Christians, have I've come not to bring peace but a sword on, like, the Air Force veterans bumper sticker, because they think it's like they don't understand the spiritual symbolic nature of that saying. But Yogananda helps us with that one. There's a level of discipline in the process.
And look at the word discipline. Everybody has this connection with discipline being hard. Discipline, look at Jesus, his disciples.
Yes.
Discipline. People that followed him. I always say this, like, as a parent myself, we want the old way. One of my amazing teachers that I adore is a man called Dr. Gabor Mate.
Love Dr. Mate. He's crushing right now too, which is awesome to see.
I mean, when I was trying to get sober for a very long time, in the rooms of AA in New York, in and out of meetings, in like half of me wanting to get sober, half of me really terrified that like life would be not worth living, and what would I do if I wasn't drinking and drugging? I mean, that's literally all I did every day. It's like I didn't know any other life since I was 15 years of age. So I thought, you could never enjoy a wedding or go for lunch with friends, or, gosh, do I have a personality? That was my biggest concern, was like, I had this...
Who am I really?
who am I at all? Like, not really. Who am I at all?
Yeah.
But also, partying had become such an integral part of my identity. Like, I was known to be a great partier. Like, I say that now. I always say I'm going to write a book of stupid things I used to say. There's a lot of content to go into those books. But I used to say stupid shit all the time. But one of the things was like, really, this party alley identity was like, oh, have Ali at your party, invite her. She's so much fun. She's always the last person to stay. Come on, she'll get up and give you a sing-song. And it's like, so you became the center of attention. And my entire life and identity was built around that. Like, even when I remember dating an ex-boyfriend in the beginning, and he'd say to me, oh, what I love is that I can take you to a bar and you can go up and you can chat to anyone and I don't have to worry about you. And I'm thinking, that's probably because of alcohol, right? Take that away. Am I that person? Am I this person who can get on with people, who is fun? Like, all of these things. It is, anyone listening who has moved into recovery will know how deeply terrifying that moment, that transition, right? Because it's a transition from living with a crutch that you have the illusion, back to your word illusion, gives you so much, to taking that away and rebuilding your life truly from the inside out. You know, like digging really deep. And the thing about when we move into recovery is we don't get to just feel the good things. We have to feel it all. And that was my big kind of step into the world of emotions. This whole world that I had been avoiding and suppressing and repressing and running away from. I mean, I went as far as to move from city to city to city to city. If I was struggling in New York, I'd go to Miami for 3 months, or I'd go down to South Africa for 6 months, or I'd pop off to Australia. I mean, I was constantly seeking, but seeking externally. Outside. And it was like this happiness that it was close. Like, I could see it sometimes. I could kind of taste it, but it was almost like it kept slipping through my fingers. And the thing about it is, I didn't realize is that I'm constantly with me. So there was this illusion of running, but always being with myself. And it's like, you know, eventually everything comes to a head. I don't care whether it's when you're 30 or 60 or 80 or whatever. Life catches up on you and you catch up on you. And so I always say to people, you know, when you get the call, which we all do, we all get the call. We all get the call to awaken. We all have life experiences that happen where, you know, our come to Jesus moments or you know, whatever we want to call it. And your willingness to answer the call in that moment really dictates your life for the future. And I had many of those calls before the last one. You know, many.
The phone was ringing.
Oh, my phone was ringing off the hook, which is interesting because as soon as I got sober, my phone actually stopped ringing. Like, really, in real life, ironically,
things shifted.
It stopped ringing. I always tell this funny story. I was in my mom's about a year after I got sober, and somebody's phone was ringing. And she goes, your phone? And I went, it's Saturday night at like 8 o'clock. I said, Mom, nobody's called me for a year. And she was
I'm eating soup right now in the corner.
Oh my God, nobody's called you for a year. I was like, don't worry, Mom. Like, I've been through the tears. I've gotten over it. You know, she was so shocked that nobody had called. And I'm like, well, that's the reality of giving up alcohol in Ireland.
And to your point, that's hilarious, by the way. They're drinking in Ireland right now. It's very courageous. I mean, it takes an immense amount of courage to rebuild that identity and say, and not even rebuild, but rediscover.
Yeah.
It's, you know, there's a core theme with mystics in remembering and undoing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, we're not necessarily like, the ego wants to build up this false thing, this persona of like, hey, everybody, look at me. And like, I'm the funny person at the thing. And it's just like, no, it's just undoing what you're not. Like, it's just carving off all the false stuff. That's what the mystic journey is. And that's what recovery, I think, can definitely accelerate.
Yeah, I mean, look at we're rebuilding, remembering, reuniting with parts of ourselves. It's like all the words that you can think of, you know, restoring, revitalizing. Gosh, I could go on and on. But I mean, it is the great, like, I'm so grateful for my time in the fashion industry. I met the most wonderful people. I'm so grateful for the depths of darkness that I experienced, because I don't think you can truly enjoy the magic of life until you have had the contrasting experience of knowing what it's not. Like at 46 years of age, I have absolutely no illusions that the grass is greener anywhere other than where I water it. Like, I know that people in my industry, most of them are not happy. There are some of them that are really happy. We also need to have that conversation. There are a lot of people in my industry who are incredibly happy. Friends of mine who have always been super duper grounded since day one, who have beautiful and blessed lives. Is that possible? 100%. But for the most part, people are chasing something that is an illusion. And I now know, when I look at social media, or when I see people in Hollywood, or when I see people in my industry, I know what it's like to be in that industry. I was reared in it. I lived in it for a very long time. And nothing outside of you is ever going to give you what you can only give yourself. And that is a reoccurring theme in my life that I am relearning over and over and over and over. It's like the book stops with us. You know, it's like for years I was stuck in the victim consciousness. You know, my addictions were, well, first of all, not my fault. You know, if I wasn't working, it was my agent's fault. If a relationship wasn't...
Everybody but me.
Oh, everybody but me. Everybody but me. But then I was also, you know...
They didn't help, by the way, but...
Well, I mean, they didn't, but at the same time, you know, I was also going to psychiatrists and the best therapists who were also never really holding me accountable. And again, not their job to fix me. Not their job to... But it would have been awesome if somebody had helped me connect the dots, like helped me connect the dots that maybe my partying had to do with my mental health issues, because, you know, imagine that you take alcohol and drugs out of the equation and most of your depression and anxiety disappears. Like, it's a conversation that's not had enough. Like I always say to people, if you are struggling with depression and anxiety and you are drinking, you are making it worse. Fact. Actually, one of the topics that there is no argument on. Like, there just is no argument on that.
It's literally a depressant,
yes.
Chemically, right? So, yeah.
And you're using it to cope. But it's funny because, you know, alcohol increases the GABA, which is a relaxant, and it makes you feel calm. But depending on how much you drink, so it's like you're chasing this calm with the glass of wine. So I always say to people, oh, the glass of wine works. Don't think it doesn't, because it does. But temporarily, because the next day when you wake up, the amount of GABA that you've produced, you'll have the equal and opposite called anxiety. So it's going to balance itself back out. And what used to happen is my anxiety was so horrific that I was chasing it with medication and benzos, and doctors were very happy to prescribe medication for side effects of medication for side. I call it polypharmacy today in today's world. Like we live in a world where there's a pill for every ill. You know, like the whole idea of doing the work is just not there for a lot of people, and we cannot avoid doing the work. And I think the biggest lie that we've been told in the world of mental health is that we can take a pill to make us happy all the time. And people say, oh, I know it's not going to make me happy all the time, but look at the messaging that we're sending. If you're struggling, if you feel sad, if you're grieving, or any of these emotions, well, if you can't get rid of them, we're going to medicate them away. Now, I think that's a very dangerous precedent to set, because first of all, it's sending the message that those emotions are not good and you are not to feel them. And I think grief is one of our greatest teachers. Sadness is giving you an indication of something that's happening in your life. Fear is really, really important. If I'm a woman and I'm walking down the road and I feel something behind me, I want to have a healthy sense of fear, right? I want to be connected to all of me. So a lot of my work is teaching people how to accept, feel all of their emotions, because it's the only way we can heal. And I was so terrified of grieving or sadness or pain. Like Gabor Mate says, ask not why the addiction, ask why the pain. I remember reading that going, oh my gosh, nobody's ever said it like that. Nobody has ever explained it like that. And watching one of his videos was one of the major catalysts in my recovery because it was helping me to understand that my behaviour was actually trying to self-soothe the part of me in pain. I just thought, I'm broken, I'm beyond help, I cannot stop drinking once I start. Once I start doing drugs, I can't stop, and there's something wrong with me. I'm fundamentally broken. Never did anyone ever say to me, like, why are you in pain?
Right. Not what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
What happened to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like I started to realize then that, I'm covering up all this pain that is seeking to be released from me. And I mean, that work is endless. It is never done. I'm still doing it.
What's it like being pain-free all the time? No,
oh, that would be amazing.
You're just saying that. No, you're so right. And like, it takes such a conscious effort to do that and sit in that. And what's coming up for me too is like Thich Nhat Hanh. Like,
yes.
Because he's the master of the power of mindfulness, which you're an extremely sophisticated mindfulness teacher, is when you sit with that emotion in a place of presence and a place of grounded breath and a place of no pushing, no pulling, no anything, just your level of awareness. It's almost a capital A awareness starts to, it's not necessarily going to vaporize it, but it's going to help you work with it. It's going to help you integrate it much, much more effectively than the bottle againist.
Oh, listen, I mean, feeling your emotions in the very beginning, if you have never had the experience of feeling, especially uncomfortable emotions, can almost feel like a tidal wave moving through your body. And it's like, you can feel these emotions come up. When we sit in meditation, we're kind of taught, meditate and practice mindfulness and do all these things. They're going to make you happier. Like, we forget to give people the real information, which is, actually, when you sit in silence for the first time, everything that you have been ignoring, everything you've been ignoring is going to suddenly want to come up and be seen in that moment. And I always say, remember, emotions are just energy. They're energy in motion. And they just want to keep going. They want to keep moving on their journey. And when they get stuck in your body, they cause pain and dis-ease. That's what the word disease is. I'm not at ease.
Yeah.
And actually, the foundation of doing this work is relaxation. And relaxation, you can call that meditation and relaxation. But relaxation is the foundation of all of this work. Why? Because it opens up your energy field, right? Like, think about when you're depressed and anxious. We say she spiraled out of control. She spiraled into a depression. So the top of the spiral is quite wide and open, right? So we're open, we're receptive, we're more relaxed. Then as we go down the spiral, which a lot of people today, they're stressed, they're overwhelmed, they're busy, they've no space. And as you get down and you tighten up, there's no room for anything. There's no room for problem solving, creativity, solutions, relationships. Like, we are tight and we're wound up. So we got to relax. Open up, relax. Think of all the Eastern, Tai Chi, Qigong. Think of all of these ancient practices. What are they teaching you? To open up, to relax, to get slower in your movement. And it's very, very powerful because when we're open and relaxed, everything can now start to move through us. We open up our energy channels. But I always say to people, when you start working with your energy and you start bringing a relaxation practice in, you can have an emotional, energetic detox, just as you would if you did a physical detox. Like, if you were eating crap food for months on end and you said to me, Ali, I'm going to do a 5-day water fast tomorrow, I'd be like, I don't know if that's a good idea. You should probably get your body, make it a fit receptacle, prepare it for the fast that you're about to do, because what it'll do is it'll dump all the toxins that are in your fat cells into your system. And if your detox pathways aren't open, you're going to get real sick and have what's called a Herxheimer reaction. So your body will be overloaded with toxins, won't be able to process them so quickly because you're forcing your body into a state it's not used to and that it's not natural. So if you're somebody that's been wound up and tight for years and you're chronically stressed and overwhelmed and have never given yourself space, and then you introduce a relaxation practice, some of my clients say to me, oh my gosh, I've been exhausted for 3 days. I just want to go to bed. And I'm like, awesome, that means it's working. Because when you relax, think about it, energy that's been stuck in your physical body will start to dislodge. It'll start to move, and energy is emotion. So you might feel tired or, overwhelmed or various different things. But the work that you do on yourself as far as energy, because we're energetic beings, is the most important work you can do in this life.
I really, really appreciate the disclaimer that you just offered around the disruptive characteristic of a positive health change.
Yes.
From meditate, because I'm more experienced in meditation, less so than with dieting and wellness and things like that. It's just not my area. It's your area. But from a meditation standpoint, it's almost, it's constant to myth bust when folks say, oh, I can't meditate, I think too much. Or I can't meditate, how can I stop my thoughts? It's like, it's working. Yeah. Oh, you have 1 million thoughts. You just noticed your thoughts.
Yes.
And like, you're right. It's like the mind, the body, whatever, it takes the opportunity to say, oh, okay, now here's my moment to just shove all of that in. And the worst thing you can do as someone that's new to that is to say, oh, okay, never mind. It's not for me. It's, no. This is the it's settling. The dust is settling here,
Well, I remember my teacher, Sagyam Rinpoche, God rest.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who did you study with?
Sagyam Rinpoche. So the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, one of my toughest teachers. Now, I respond well to tough teachers. Some people don't. I think that's also something, that's a caveat and something people should know who your teachers are. Like, I am a great believer in when the student's ready, the teacher appears. I'm also a great believer of the student's ready, the teacher disappears, right? And it's really interesting because he was very tough on me because he really wanted me to get out of my own way. And I was unbelievably stubborn. Like, when I think back to how stubborn I was during that time, like sitting in these silent retreats with these wonderful teachers, but when something is said, this is, the hands would be crossed and, just very defensive, but because, it would have hit a wound or I would have really resonated with it as truth and not be able to give it the space it needed. But there's so many things that Rinpoche taught me. I remember him saying to me, I had a difficult relationship with my mom on and off my whole life. And I remember him saying to me, your job is to do the work and to get so peaceful within yourself that if your mom comes up and says 1 million horrible things to you, you just turn around and say, okay, Mom, thank you. Now, in my 20s, when he was saying that to me, I was like, what? Like, what? How and what? And that doesn't even make any sense to me. But over the years, and it's funny because since he's passed away, there's so much that I would love to say to him. And I know I can communicate with him in spirit, where I'm like, I get it now. I get this, I get that. But he was such a great teacher for me, like from the perspective of my expectation, around, I was expecting the practice to do the work for me, if that makes sense, Oh, I'll meditate. Hey, look at me. I turned up to this retreat and gave up 3 or 5 or 10 days of my life. So I deserve X, Y, and Z. Please give it over. Like, that was the level of arrogance I was operating at during that time. And
that's the human
I remember him saying, James was a toddler. This is actually one of the most beautiful lessons experientially I've ever had.
What period is this, by the way? Early 30s?
So, James, this is probably
Late
about
20s.
12 years ago. 11, 12 years ago. Yeah. Rinpoche died about 4 or 5 years ago. So I remember, let me tell you first of all, before we go into that story, how he ended up being my teacher. My dad died at 21. I picked up the book, The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. It was the first book that, and by the way, it's not an easy read. It's not like a book you sit down and just like, it's a tough read. It's, even now I pick it up and it's a really meditative read. But it helped me understand death. Like, I had been brought up in Catholic Ireland, but nobody had ever really spoken about death. I really didn't understand how to cope with death. Mm-hmm. And I was finding it very difficult to process grief around my dad. And then I remember coming home to Ireland and I was looking at a newspaper and it was like Sagyam Rinpoche will be teaching in this place called Darkshinbera in Ireland. And I'm like, I was so excited. And I remember telling my whole family, oh my God, the guy that wrote the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And they were all like, who and what? And like, what are you talking about? And I went down and it was my first time meeting him. And then years later, I just continued to go on more and more and more retreats. So I remember going down to a retreat and he said to me, so how's your meditation practice? And I was like, of course, like all of the excuses first, right? So I was like, well, Rinpoche, like I just, I have a toddler now. So, I can't really do X, Y, and Z. And he goes, in front of the whole room, he goes, oh, the whole world has to change itself so that Alison can meditate because now she's a mother. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he said that in front of everyone. And even like a couple of the other people, because you'll always find people to agree with you, right? They'll go, God, I can't believe he said that in front of the congregation, in front of the Sangha or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I know, you're right. And then he said to me afterwards, I bet you went out and spoke about me and said this. And I was like, oh my God, I did. That's exactly what I did. And he said to me, let me just give you a little bit of advice. He goes, I want you to wake up every morning, continue with your practice. And as long as your toddler is safe, right, and wherever you wake up, I want you to place a cushion beside you. You say nothing. You don't give your toddler any direction. But you continue to practice every day. And the most miraculous things started to happen. From a couple of years old, maybe even younger, James would some days come and sit in his cushion in pure silence for 20 minutes. And then some days he'd just play around me. And so for him, meditation was as normal as waking up and having a cup of coffee or breakfast for people. And it was one of the most profound ways. I'm somebody, and I think a lot of people are, I learn through experience. I have to really experience something to understand it. I'm not a good person to say learn cooking from a video, but if someone teaches me how to make a meal with me, I learn hands-on. I'm a hands-on person. And I remember it changed the trajectory of my whole parenting journey because I really understood that they don't do what we say, they do what they see. Children copy us. And Gabor Mate has a book called Hold On to Your Kids that he wrote with a man called Gordon Neufeld. It's a very profound book where he talks about, kids are not supposed to be peer-oriented. They're supposed to be parent-oriented. And they're not anymore in society. And it's not normal. And it's the core place that a lot of our problems come from in society and within our teenagers as well. And it is very important that, like, for me as a parent, understanding that I can do this all day long and talk and give out. But what he's really watching is what I'm doing. And that even goes for usage with the phone, on a computer, overworking. Like if I'm saying one thing to a teenager and I'm doing another, they're not listening to what I'm saying. They're like, well, you're on your phone. You're still scrolling at 7 p.m, so you're full of crap, right? So
they're the mirrorist of mirrors.
And it just brings a little bit more awareness. Like I think this journey is all about awareness because it's the greatest agent for change, but it's like having the awareness of the awareness, if that makes sense, is where the real work happens. Being really aware of yourself. And the more we get aware, the more we see. Like we don't get to see everything at once because otherwise we'd have a nervous breakdown. Let's be honest. So we get a little bit more access and a little bit more access and a little bit more access as our consciousness shifts and expands and grows. It's a never-ending journey. Never-ending.
This episode is for me. If anyone else is listening, great. But I'm a father, as you know. Bobby P, who's 4 years old now, and my dad calls him strong-willed. He's a handsome guy. Thank you. He's a sweet guy. He's a very, very kind young man, and he's a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. He's just spiritually, like he's just radiating this just force of energy. And, he's at that period now where it's like he's watching the way I put my hand on the chair. I am under the microscopiest thing ever.
The way you speak to people, the way you speak about people, the way you answer people, your behavior at home. It really calls us.
It's like, are you going to level up?
Yes.
Or are you going to just be as shitty,
and also,
or somewhere in the middle, and be gentle with yourself too? Like that, the other thing is, I'm trying not to inquisition my lack as a human.
Well, also, I think it's important for children to see, that we make mistakes and we make up for them. I remember one of the things that Rinpoche said to me is, as James was getting a little bit older, I remember maybe sharing something, or he would say, and did you speak to him about it? Now, my mother and father never spoke to me about anything. So this, I just want to say, where the stage was set for my life is growing up like most people, I wasn't asked, how do you feel? Or what kind of emotion is that? Those kind of conversations were never had, ever.
Where's the emotion in your body?
No,
Alison?
come on. It'd be like, what?
Yeah.
So, a lot of the stuff in my family was brushed under the carpet, not spoken about. Anything difficult was not spoken about. Anything emotional, not spoken about. Owning your shit, definitely not spoken about. Apologies, never happened. However, I remember Rinpoche saying to me, I want you to go home and sit him down, even at this age, and say, this is what mommy said or whatever. And, I just wanted to understand that I'm sorry for this, and help him learn that it's okay to be fully human. It's okay to make a mistake. And this is how you deal with it. And that is something that I have continued. He's 13 and he comes to me and does the same now.
And
he'll come
more
out.
mature than me, by the way.
He'll come out, of his bedroom if we have an argument or something, and he'll say, Mom, I see what you mean and I'm sorry. And it doesn't mean I have this all figured out or have it figured out at all. We're figuring this out as we go.
Right.
But my whole intention around parenting is to break the patterns that I was brought up with that caused me the most pain and suffering. And I think, look, we were screwed up by our parents because they did the best they could. They were screwed up. And our job is to screw our kids up a little bit less, right?
Exactly.
Just a little bit less than we were. That's because, hilarious. Part of the human condition is pain, suffering, learning through mistakes. Nobody's doing this life perfectly. Part of the excitement of this life is just the thrill and excitement of feeling it all. I always say, I was saying to a client the other day, one of my clients really was seeking certainty, certainty in what's happening next. We've all got the control freak thing going on a little bit, right? Every single one of us would love to be able to be in control of everything. But I always say to people, if you knew exactly what was going to happen every day, if you knew everything that was going to happen every day for the rest of your life, I almost guarantee you would be so freaking bored, because part of the excitement of life is waking up every day and not having really a clue what's going to happen. And then that's the beauty of meeting a stranger in a cafe or getting an opportunity to travel somewhere, or your son at 4 doing something that just lights you up or saying something to you. All of those moments wouldn't happen if we knew exactly what was coming next. And this is a game. That's why one of my talks I give in corporates is called The Game of Life. And we are playing a game. And the rule of the game is to practice awareness, first and foremost. And then it's a game of energy, right? So when we're playing this game, it's am I being a victim or am I being a creator? Am I awake or asleep in the dream? Am I conscious or unconscious? Am I playing the game or is the game playing me? And one of the things I say to people is, in the game, if you're not taking care of yourself, doing the personal development work, you're just going to go into the world and match what you meet. Now, what I mean by that is that if you're somebody who's just matching what they meet energetically, it means when you go out into the world and you meet someone in the supermarket who's in a bad mood, you're going to leave the supermarket in a bad mood. If you go into a cafe and you meet someone who's in a great mood, you're going to leave in a great mood. That's a very exhausting way to live, let me tell you, because it means that your mood and how you feel is determined by the world outside you. And let me tell you, as soon as you open your front door, the world outside is trying to take you out of yourself. It's not trying to bring you home to yourself and help you remember who you are.
Yeah.
So learning to play with your energy, to have more fun, and playing the game of life, the key word there is play. How many adults can say that they've done something recently where they had fun, they were playing, or that made them feel alive? Not many, right? Unfortunately. Play is not just for kids, it's how we grow. It's how we grow as adults. And so when you learn how to take care of your energy, clean your energy, have a really strong intention about how you want to be, who you want to be with, learning to say no, learning to have boundaries, you can not only change the game, but you can transform every aspect of your life through learning that. It's amazing.
So well put. Gosh, you should be on radio and TV and be a wise mindfulness teacher in all of this. Oh, wait, you are. So much I want to go in a few directions. One is the word in Sanskrit is actually lila, which is divine play.
Oh, I love it.
Isn't that nice?
Yes. I also love that word.
Lighthearted.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a very lighthearted piece from Hinduism, which is a million variations of. But the other thing I want to say was you really do an amazing job of having that conscious intention around like having a short meditation before something. Our friend Melina, our mutual friend Melina, who's a mindfulness teacher, she does that all the time. She's like, hey, we have this meeting. Okay, I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes. It's like, y'all really understand, you really get that. Like Alison did a grounding exercise in here while I was messing with the audio. And it's because you know that this works.
My energy.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
So no, I was grounding. You're 100% right. I was grounding. But what's also really important to know is I was cleaning my energy. And what I mean by that is I was bringing it back to neutral. So any energy that I picked up before I came in today, I didn't want to bring into our conversation. And I also wanted to keep my energy clean so that we could have. And then I also, so that we could have a beautiful conversation on a strong foundation. But also what I always do is I say a prayer and ask the Creator to work through me for the highest good of everybody listening. So I kind of take it out of me, like put through me whatever message you would like me to bring through today. And it brings such a beautiful quality into my life, because when I was a model, everything was very, very self-absorbed and everything was about me and what I looked like. Me, 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 me. And it's such a nicer way to live when it's like, how can I serve? Because that's what we're here to do, right? And that's one of the things I love about your work. From the minute I met you, I actually could start crying now, which I probably will. Like a servant's heart. When I read your book changed my life more than most books I've ever read. And because you get it, you've done the work, you live it with every single cell of your body. And that's rare. That level of authenticity is incredible. And it's incredible to be around and to be your friend.
You're so sweet.
Thank you.
I'm so touched by you saying this. And
well, it's true.
I'm working on the awakening process just like everybody else. And my teacher who passed last year, Richard, the Apache medicine man, was, to your point of use me, Lord. Yeah. It's like, that's the move, guys, is like, it's also the George Harrison song, I, Me, Mine. The old Beatles song, I, Me, Mine, I, Me, Mine. The world is singing, I, Me, Mine. And it's like, no, just use this body, use this voice, use this personality, use all my trials and tribulations and travails and successes and abundance and all these things. Like, that's the way to find happiness, and on any level beyond just the next
when you allow
90 seconds.
God to work through you, there is something so magical that happens. Like when we talk about expansive energy, and I always feel I get really emotional when my heart opens. Like my heart was closed for so long. Like I think I closed my heart when I was probably about 6, from abuse, from different things that happened to me. Like, and I closed that thing right up and I put like a big metal guard around it. And one of the most difficult parts of this journey is opening your heart, because when you open your heart, the vulnerability that comes with that can almost take your breath away. It can be so difficult at times. It's like, because you do almost feel naked. It's like you're walking down the street naked. It's like you've gotten used to armoring up all the time. And it becomes like but the thing is, when you stop yourself from feeling the pain, you also stop yourself from feeling the joy. And I never realized that. So I was on this journey to try and find happiness, but I could actually never get there because I wasn't allowing myself to feel the pain. Because they're both opposite ends of the spectrum. So I was cutting myself off from the good. And now it's like, I often feel like my emotions are like, oh, there's another opportunity to come out to play. Because for years, I just kept them. Like I always say, depression is a lack of expression. And I suffered with suicidal ideation from a little girl. Like from a little girl, I always remember not just deeply, deeply feeling I didn't want to be here. And there were so many pivotal moments in my life where I thought through the easiest way to do it. How could I do it? You know, when could I do it? Like it would consume me, you know, and it's interesting because underlying that feeling of not wanting to be here in my heart was everybody will be better off without me. Like if they aren't worrying about me, if they're not worrying about my drinking or my drugging or where I am, imagine how peaceful their life would be. Like these are the kind of thoughts that go through your mind. Yeah. And that's why I'm always saying I have such a deep level of understanding for the world of mental health and when people are struggling, because I know what it's like. Like people say to me, why? I remember a friend said to me recently, God, your life is hard work. And I said, what do you mean? That's interesting. And she goes, I've watched you. She was staying with me. She said, like, you get up in the morning, you meditate, you're writing in your journal, you're on my rebounder, I'm doing, there's a lot that happens in the morning. I love it, by the way. And I was like, wow, it's interesting that you see that as hard work, where the peace that gives me and the sense of presence and
the flow
but also like I'm actually living now, whereas before I was existing. Like now I actually live. I'm alive in my life. Like there's a big difference. And I'm like, oh no, you see, I know what it's like to be depressed every day, to be anxious, to be caught up in suicidal ideation and really in like addiction had me in its grasp. I have 2 overdoses under my belt. You know, like I'm it's a freaking miracle I'm here. Like sitting here with you, I always think that every time I feel sorry for myself, which let's face it happens, you know, we're all human beings. The victim consciousness is the first stage of consciousness. It's the first stage of awakening. And when I go back and I have a pity party, I just think to myself, you have survived 100% of your worst days. Ooh, awesome. I have a 100% success rate at life.
Wow.
Like, that's kind of cool.
That's profound. You're batting 1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if you're here and you're breathing, you have survived 100% of your worst days. Like, that always makes me feel better. Always.
You also are a deep practitioner of a favorite book of mine, which is A Course in Miracles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, you know, it really is one of my Bibles. It's a spiritual masterpiece. Yeah. I've talked about it on most of these episodes. There's a little line from earlier that I wanted to reference, which is, in my defenselessness, my safety lies. You talk about vulnerability because you don't have anything to defend.
Yeah.
But of course, it's interesting. I mean, it's empathy and solidarity to anybody that has felt, you know, a percentage of the darkness and depths that you've endured and overcome. You know, there's an aspect to A Course in Miracles and non-dual philosophy to me, which is very interesting in the relationship to, I don't want to be here in this world. Because what mystic philosophy in general says, which is, this is reductive, but is that we're not from here. This actually isn't our home. Yeah. We're from the capital R reality. We're from the capital T transcendental. This is a passing show, and you know, and I think it's Gospel of Thomas. Jesus says, "Be passersby. Don't build your dwelling on the bridge. It's just a bridge, you know."
And one of the
it doesn't mean kill yourself, by the way.
It absolutely doesn't. And actually,
but it means detach from the material.
And when Jesus says, "Be in the world, but not of it,"
exactly,
right? Exactly. And then that I always come back to that, because as an empath and a highly sensitive person, one of the reasons I teach about energy management is when you are a highly sensitive person or an empath, you do have the tendency to pick up on everyone's energy. And I'm always saying to a lot of my clients, if you're in a cafe and you come out having very dark thoughts, they might not be yours. You might be picking up energy and thoughts. And remember, thoughts are energy, you know, so when they transfer, like, you know, they transfer to other people. So if you've sat in a chair in a cafe where somebody's just sat there and they're not having a good day, you're picking up some of their energy. They leave some of it behind. Like, this is the world of energy that I love. It's the subtleties of the energetic world that I'm really interested in, because I know that I could go out into the world and literally pick up everything. I'm like a sponge, which is why cleaning my energy and taking care of myself and grounding in my body. I am in my astrological chart, I'm a Pisces and I've Cancer rising, and I've got so much freaking water in my chart. It's unbelievable. But there is no earth in my chart at all, like none. Now, my son's a Virgo, so it makes sense that my son would come in to help ground me. And actually, when my son was born, he saved my life, 100% saved my life. Like, when he was 2 years of age, he used to tell me that he came to save me.
Oh my
when he started
God.
speaking. Like,
Now
I'm not joking. Like, I used to cry. I used to be like, wow. And he is a Virgo. He's very grounded, and he came here to ground me. You know, like, I am all emotions. Like, so it would make sense, of course, that I come here to teach and be a meditation teacher. You know, like, I teach get high on your own supply, which I believe you can do through meditation and transformational breath work, you know, from somebody who came from the getting high on every supply outside of you. I think it's pretty cool to know that you can get high in your own supply, which you actually can. Like, breath work, you know, creates DMT and lots of different experiences. But, you know, I also believe that you can't really experience the light without having visited the darkness. And I know what it's like to be there. But when I work with people, I also say, you know, I know it's possible to move through it. And the most annoying thing when you're in a really shitty place and someone says to you, this too shall pass. It's probably one of the most annoying things that people used to say that to me, because when you're in a very dark place, you do not want to hear anybody say anything about how this will be over. Because
can I get an ETA on the passing?
Yeah. I don't like when, and you don't know what it feels like, and you have no idea how much pain I'm in right now, right? Like, I mean, that's the kind of stuff will be going through my head. But then when night turns to day again, and we were driving here today, and James said, just look at the flowers. I mean, I have never seen anything as beautiful as the spring flowers this year. Yeah. Driving from where I am, it's just like
Central Texas.
Oh my gosh, nature is so magical, but it's also teaching us about renewal, you know, regeneration, rebirth. It's spring. It's like we have that opportunity every day, every moment. Sharon Salzberg, a beautiful meditation teacher, when I was on a retreat with her, just kept saying over and over, every opportunity is an opportunity to start again, to start again, to start again. I think we all need that reminder when we think we have fucked up, excuse my language, or, you know, we've messed something up, and it's
was
like
that the first F-bomb?
It was, crazy. And I'm super proud of myself.
I'm so impressed.
I'm on a very I'm trying not to curse as much. So yes, I'm Irish, and like back in the day, every second word would have been cursed. So that was like a long time before I cursed. So. I'm
shocked. No, that's hilarious. I love Sharon Salzberg. I love that image. In Buddhism, always arriving. Yeah, always arriving.
Always.
I'm halfway through the life of Milarepa.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of your Tibetan Buddhist background, and I'm like, why did I take so long to read this guy, by the way? Because he's like the most famous Tibetan Buddhist of all time. But I didn't know much about his life. And apparently what happened was his father worked very hard and was able to like become a prosperous merchant or whatever. And so he's in this, his family's in this valley. He's kind of like the rich guy. He's like a good man. Everybody loves him, blah, blah, blah. He dies and he leaves his money and everything to the aunt and uncle, Milarepa's aunt and uncle, and to kind of help the mom who's grieving, and Milarepa and his young sister, I think. And then when he comes of age, the kid just keep the money. It's like a classic, like the aunt and uncle or shit, basically. And the mom, they're destitute, they're thrown out, they're homeless, like they just stole the inheritance. And the mom tells Milarepa to go learn magic from these lamas in the mountains and stuff. And he does. And he's able to like learn how to do hailstorms, commit hailstorms, ruin these crops, and it kills people and all this stuff. And then he kind of repents. He has this like repenting thing, and he goes off and finds his teacher, and and he becomes the most, this Christ-like figure, basically. But I'm so touched by like, he literally, when he meets Marpa, his teacher, he says, I'm a great sinner. I come to learn. I commit my body, mind, soul to repent from my past things. And it's like, this dude he's literally right up there with the Buddha and as high as like Jesus to these people. And he has that background of, I come from a great sinner. Yogananda says, a saint is a sinner who never gave up. We all have these past mistakes, and we all made the wrong decision. We all thought with the ego. We all thought for vanity. We all were hypocrites. We all did all these things, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And you have to just keep going and it's incremental. It's incremental over time. And I got plenty of ways to go myself, but it's like helpful if you're in this body, being gentle with your own bullshit.
If you're in this body and you have a breath in your body, you're still learning. You're still going to make mistakes. You're still going to mess up. You're still going to do all of that stuff. But what every single teacher has taught us since the beginning of time is that, once we're here to learn from all of that. Like, nobody's perfect. Like, that's one of the things that we cause ourselves so much pain and suffering is when we wear these masks. And the amount of time and energy it takes to keep up the facade of someone you're not is absolutely exhausting.
Draining. Yeah.
I mean, the greatest, I think the most rebellious thing human beings can do today is actually just be themselves. Like, getting sober allowed me, and it was not easy, by the way, and I'm, just being myself. And you know how relaxing it is? Like, I choose a word of the year every year. This year is trust. And I always say the word you choose will become your teacher and also will be your path of initiation for the year, because everything that's unlike trust in my life is going to come up to be seen. And I was on the phone to this amazing doctor, Dr. Chandra Smith, who wrote a book called Sacred Rest. She's an extraordinary human being. I love her.
That's a cool title.
And she said something so profound, because I teach about relaxation and we're going to be doing some work together, and she teaches about the 7 different types of rest and why it's so important. And she's a physician, and her journey into
there's more than one.
Yes, I love that. A physician is teaching their patients this. I mean, wow! It just shows me what's possible, right, in the world. And she said something to me that I've been meditating on for the last few days. And she said, you can only rest as deep as you trust. And I thought, oh,
that's
ain't
nice.
That the truth?
That's really nice.
Ain't that the truth?
It's
right?
Trust is the first characteristic of the teacher of God. Of course, Miracles Manual for Teachers.
Yeah.
The second is honesty.
Honesty, yeah. Yeah.
The first is trust.
But being honest with yourself, being brutally honest with yourself about how you're showing up, what choices you're making. And that's why I always say awareness is, a very, very powerful teacher. Once we wake up awareness, we can't put it back to sleep. Although most of us would like to sometimes, once you know more, you can't go back. And awareness is you have to be able to get real with yourself. One of the things is where am I standing in my own way? Where am I full of crap? Where am I being triggered? And knowing that if someone triggers you, it's always an opportunity for you to go in and do the work. Always. It's always an opportunity for you. Everybody on your path is your teacher. I don't know if you remember Dolores Cannon. Did you ever?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love.
She's kind of making some rounds of spiritual gram right now, which is cool. People
I always wanted to get a QHHT. She's, for those listening who don't know her, she started a hypnosis technique called quantum healing hypnosis technique. Her family and her daughter are still continuing it today. But she recorded thousands and thousands and thousands of her sessions, which is really cool because they have all the evidence, and started to notice a lot of common themes. And she wrote books like The Convoluted Universe. But I remember years ago, she said, we're in Earth School. And every single thing that happens to us every day. She also said this is the most difficult school. The strongest come here.
This is the academy.
Yeah, this is the real elite academy. So, if you're here, you've already made it to the elite academy. Kind of goes with my 100% of your worst days, which I think is really cool because it means everybody that pops up, everything that comes into your experience, you're creating it all for you. You're never creating against yourself. I think some people think that they're creating against themselves or things are just happening to them. And I'm you're never creating against yourself. Even your emotions are trying to help you if they're uncomfortable. They're trying to help you, not harm you. It's the emotions that came in to help you when you were a kid are, yes, certainly the ones that can cause pathology and disease when you get older. You know, if you're a kid and you were traumatized and a part of you shut down and you're struggling with anxiety and depression when you get older, it maybe need to be look and do some deeper work with a therapist or somebody around what happened to you when you were young. But that part of you when you were young was trying to protect you. Like, it wasn't trying to hurt you. So I always get my clients...
So the pushing away of it is what makes it volatile.
It's like, speak to that part of you, integrate it, bring it into the conversation and thank it. Gosh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for always having my back. But you know what? I'm older now and I've got this. And how would you feel about me giving you a break? Just for a little while.
I like that.
Just for a little while. And if you speak to that part of you, sometimes you'll find that the part of you says, absolutely not. I have a really important job and you need me. So I sometimes say, just give it a break for a week or 2 weeks and see how you get on, because we've all these different parts of ourselves, that have taken up different roles at different times in our life. And we have to become aware of the different aspects of us. Like, there was a part of myself that just shut down with any relationship or anything. It's like, I'm coming in now. I've got to protect you. And the work around that was making that part of me feel safe, helping me integrate that part. And doing the heart-based work that you talked about in the beginning is the most important work, I think, for us as human beings today. Is connecting with our heart, opening our heart, allowing ourselves to be led, from a different place and space than trying to logically figure everything out.
You're UCLA mindfulness trained.
Yeah.
Which is a very impressive certification in the mindfulness world as a mindfulness teacher with a less reputable certification than Alison. You're also heart math facilitator. Yeah. They're doing amazing work, to your point, around the connections. I think most of the people who read me are, already interested in mystic philosophy and things like that. I think, and some of them are coming from Christian background that they left, and so there's a hard turn towards science, and science is great. Thumbs up, everybody, but scientific kind of secular crowd, material crowd, sometimes is less open to ideas like the energy of the people in the cafe before you and so on. And what's fantastic about your expertise is that you are aware of the research now. I mean, and organizations like HeartMath and these mindfulness certifications.
I love science.
So much evidence.
And there's but I do kind of think, can we as human beings ever really kind of do an experiment where we can look at the creator's work, right, and figure it out? And I didn't think that that's just so magical and so mysterious, and there's so many things that we never know. And also, like, coming even from the world of nutrition, when I was studying nutrition, and you look at even, let's bring it back to very basics, like if you're bringing it back to a study where we're looking at food or a nutrient and the effect it has in the body. Like, let's look at, say, if there was, I'm going to keep this really simple, 10 people, right? You're going to see the effect that vitamin C has on their body in the fight against a cold, a common cold, just making something up. Now, you would have to have those people with you 24/7 to do a really bulletproof, experiment, because there's things like their emotional state, the relationships they're in, the environment they're living in. Is it noisy? Is it not? Their relationship with social media. What are they eating around, taking this vitamin C?
No one's in a vacuum.
Yeah,
here.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like there's so many different variables all the time. And I think science is amazing. And I think it's a consistent and constant world that's evolving. When I started meditating 25 years ago, there was no science around meditation. There was nothing. I didn't need science to back up the experience I was having. But I'll tell you, when I went to UCLA, the benefit of sharing the most amazing brain scans with people, or the whole development of psychoneuroimmunology that Dr. Dan Siegel does there, or Diana Winston or Marvin Belzer, and some of the amazing professors at UCLA who are doing extraordinary work. What it did was it opened it up to people who were more skeptical. And, we're in a world where people are very sick. We're getting sicker quicker than we ever have before.
Sadder and madder.
Convenience has come at a cost, and things like mindfulness and meditation, I believe, are the antidote to modern life. And so when we look at HeartMath's work over 30 years, and I remember speaking to Howard Martin, who was one of the founders of HeartMath with Dr. Childra, and I remember saying to him during COVID, we were speaking, and I remember saying to him, gosh, now is your time. This is what you guys have been working decades towards. People are so chronically overwhelmed and stressed out. And I think we're at this beautiful intersection, if we allow it to be, where science and spirituality can coexist in a beautiful space. And it doesn't have to be this battle of either or. It's this and. And I think the greatest thing we can do is continue to keep an open and curious mind as we evolve and as science evolves. And it doesn't have to be absolutes, because there are no absolutes. Anybody that says to me in the dream, anyone that says to me all of this or all these people or this is we can say things like, we know meditation and mindfulness can increase the grey and white matter in the brain, but it's going to be different for every single person, right? It's going to be different depending on their central nervous system health, how they live, all these things. But one of the most exciting things for me about the merging of science and spirituality is it's more accessible to a wider population who maybe haven't been brought up with, a spiritual practice or haven't had any exposure to the spiritual side of things at all. And I think my intention and aim is, how can we help as many people as possible today, live a more peaceful life, reduce their stress and be healthier and happier. And I think we're in an energy crisis. And I don't mean like energy is in the gas that you put into your car. I do believe as human beings, we are struggling and suffering with an energy crisis. And I think the only way to do that is to create space, silence, stillness, right? It's the only path. There is no other way to reconnect with yourself as a human being other than get still. That's it. And most people aren't still ever. And I mean get still with no phone, no TV. People are walking and they're listening to podcasts. People are working out and they're listening to music. Like, there's actually very little space.
Or there's the double screen, which is the TV show while you're watching TikTok. Yeah. While Alexa's playing Spotify.
I mean, I just want to mention one book for people, The Energy Cure by William Bengston. Now, this is a man who, like, the most skeptical person I have ever read about, and I've listened to some of his podcasts. I don't know the man. I would love to meet him one day. But if you want to look at science, this man has proven that hands-on energy healing cures cancer. In fact, he has cured cancer with hands-on energy healing in 100% of trials he's done with mice. So he's done, I think, 7 with different universities. That is a book, if you're a skeptic and you want to read, because this man is still a skeptic, by the way, and his studies.
What's it going to take
for
him to not be a skeptic anymore? That's
I think what's brilliant about his book is...
My dad's a Reiki healer for 30 years.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And he keeps asking really powerful questions. I think that's one of the things when I was reading the book, is he just asks really clever questions, really curious questions. So, I don't know. I mean, he says he's a skeptic. I would say he's curious. Right. I would maybe interpret it differently.
He's an open-minded skeptic.
But it's wonderful to have a book and to have someone like him who's doing all this research. He met this guy called Ben when he was younger. This guy, Ben, could pick up an object like, say, my phone, and without knowing anything about me, it was like a party trick he used to do, and start saying loads of stuff, get all the info or whatever. And he literally had 100% track record, and they put him under a brain scan. And his brain, when they put an object in his hand, his brain would show 2 different types of brain waves instead of just one. And at the time, they thought that one brain wave at any time was only possible. So they would take him out thinking the machine was broken, put someone in and go, the machine's okay again. But instead of like being open and curious, like the way you should be in science, by the way, because everything's always evolving, they were like, oh, the machine's broken.
It must be.
It must be broken.
Somebody tripped the wires.
So that's a book that I find is brilliant I always give to people who are a little bit more skeptical. And I'm like, read this man's book. His work is incredible.
What's it called?
The Energy Cure.
The Energy Cure.
By
The Tibetan
Bengston.
Book of Living and Dying. there's been some nice recs today.
Reading is my, gosh, I used to live in a world where I used to be so bored and thinking, oh, what'll I do today? Now I'm like, gosh, there's so much to do in this world. There's so much to learn. There's so much to experience.
You never stop being the fun party person. Your energy is brighter than ever. And it's such a pleasure to know you. You're a wealth of information. You're so enthusiastic about all this stuff. And you're just a vivacious human being. From covers of magazines to big stages to really seeing through the transitory nature of it all at the same time, and being exposed to the quote unquote heights of life, which are actually, not quite as glamorous in reality. And so I just really honor that what you went through all this stuff for us, because I haven't been to any fashion shows. You know what I'm saying? I've not been, very few people have lived, a tenth of the life that you lived. And, for you to come back basically and kind of validate the mystic experience, take note, people. You also do one-on-ones. You do speaking events. You're writing a book. There's a lot of fun projects that Alison's working on. Maybe I'll get to help out with some of them. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for your incredibly kind words. They're received with gratitude. And one of the things I've been working on for a decade, for anyone listening, is actually receiving, right? Receiving. And it's just been such a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you for dropping so many wisdom bombs. Peace.